Naturalism is one of those words that has to be very carefully defined anytime you use it. Usually it's used, well, I'll use it here in the sense of the idea that the natural sciences have an explanatory monopoly on everything. So eventually, once it's finished and we understand everything, then physics will be able to explain everything in the cosmos, including consciousness and subjective experience. Which I mean, like, yeah, I guess in my 20s, even, yeah, before I started doing philosophy, I would have been firmly in the sort of like atheist, naturalist camp where I would have thought, well, science would explain everything. Religion is nonsense. It's just, parlor games and fancy tricks and people with beliefs because they don't know what they're talking about. But if everyone studied science, then the world would be a better place. And then I started doing philosophy, phenomenology in particular. It was when I did phenomenology in my undergrad, it was, what sort of kicked open the doors for me, I guess, was Husserl's idea of anti-psychologism in these logical investigations, which he just sort of, um, I'll use the word, he poo-poos the idea that the laws of logic can be explained by psychology, because the laws of logic have to be a priori, eternal, and not dependent upon what I think or what you think. They exist ideally in the sense of they exist as an idea which is not mind dependent. So they exist, in the cosmos, and we intuit them and we get in touch with them. Yeah, so when I'm teaching first years, it's the question that always gets the biggest reactions. I ask them if math was something that was invented or something that was discovered, and people get their backs up about that one. They're either firmly in one camp or another. And the people who, yeah, a lot of people who haven't thought about it. Yeah, I'll stay with that. A lot of people who haven't thought about it yet think that they say, no, obviously it's invented. It's something we made up. It doesn't exist. And I go, well, how does it not exist? Like if we all die and then, a slime mold on planet Jupiter evolves into something that can do math in a few years, they'll do Pythagoras, or they'll figure out the Pythagorean theorem, because those things are, eternally valid and true. They won't say the words Pythagorean theorem because Pythagoras, will be dead. They'll use a different way of communicating, but that thing that they're intuiting or that they're, intentionally corresponding with will still exist. So it's not dependent upon us. And for me, I was like, okay, all right. So science doesn't have an explanatory monopoly. If you want to do science, then you need logic. And if you're using logic and the laws of math, then you have to be using these non-scientific, non-mathematical, or sorry, yeah, non-scientific, non-naturalistic objects in order to do your work. Yeah, and from there I was like, oh, okay, we need essences. All right, okay, I better look at Plato. I better look at the phenomenologists again and take them seriously.
But I think a lot of the people that try to advocate for this position, actually, the laws of logic and mathematics is actually of relatively low concern to them. I think when people try to articulate this type of position, it's usually more in reference to meaning itself. And so I'm just curious about how you then make this extra bridge from kind of like these kind of platonic essence realities of logic and mathematics to meaning that we all care about, because your student might say, okay, sure, they might discover, the laws of mathematics, which, sure, okay, they exist outside of human subjectivity, but then everything else that we might care about, like love and beauty, that's just like very specific instantiations of the human brain and the values that have evolved over time and whatnot. So it's like, how exactly do you close that gap?
Yeah, love is a good one. I like to bring that one up with students as well. Like, because it forces them to think, like, especially if they're in relationships, it's just like when your partner tells you that they love you, are you, are they just expressing some, neurobiological, physiological happenings and, just they're making noises with their mouth. So you have some sort of, socially based or socially reinforced physiological reaction. It's like, is that all it is? Like, because I also tell students that I never tell anybody what they're supposed to think or what's true. I just want them to sort of start thinking about things for themselves. But yeah, try to frame it like that. Like when you tell your mom you love her, or your dad or your kid, it was like, are you just expressing this is years of, millennia of evolution telling me to carry on the species? That's all that's happening here. It's like, it doesn't seem like that to me. Like when my daughter comes and gives me a hug and tells me she loves me, it's like there's a physiological reaction, but like I don't know, I can't accept that it's just like, that's just all it is because it feels like much more. And parents do a lot to we do things that's against that would contradict our millennia of evolution to, sustain ourselves in order to keep our kids healthy and happy and alive and continuing, not just to continue the species, but just to yeah, all right, yeah, we're kind of yeah, I don't want to jump ahead to talk about Shaler and his notion of love or the order of love, and because you're correctly orienting yourself, not just with yourself or with your family, but with the universe at large as well. If you take love to be something more than just, chemicals and electrical signals in your brain.